12 Keys to Organization-Wide Innovation Success. This is a new and improved webinar. And you can see down at the bottom of your screen it says, this is all about feeding your innovative brain. So here in the U.S., for those of us on the eastern side of the country, it's just past lunch or is lunchtime. So the good news is that this webinar, no calories. So enjoy your lunch or digest your lunch if you like, and enjoy the innovative brain food that's going to come at you right now. So want to say welcome very much. I want to welcome our two panelists who are going to be working with us today and sharing all sorts of great stuff. We have Bob Eckert, who is the CEO of New and Improved, also a co-author with yours truly of a book called More Lightning, Less Thunder, How to Energize Innovation Teams. Bob has been working in this space for nearly 20 years. Also with us is Natalie Jenkins, Director of Organizational Development here at New and Improved. Natalie's been in this space for over a decade and a half. And I want to say hi to Bob and Natalie.
Hey, good to be here.
Hello.
Great. With some other key players today, we have some inquisitive guests. We have some inquisitive guests from around the globe, literally. U.S., Canada, U.K., Germany, India, Spain, Turkey, Costa Rica, Colombia. Hello to all of our inquisitive guests, and by that we mean you, the folks who are actually paying attention and listening. We're glad you can be here to join us. We will be looking for your participation throughout the rest of the hour and also asking you to submit your questions so that we can really engage in that dialogue and get even more expertise out of Bob and Natalie. We want to make sure that we squeeze all the knowledge out of them that we possibly can. So you're going to help us do that.
Are we going to end up all shriveled up?
If necessary, yes. And if our inquisitive guests do their job correctly, there will be nothing left. So there's two other people playing here. I'm the guy on the left on your screen up there. I'm Jonathan Vihar. I am senior faculty at the Center for Creative Leadership. Also one of the co-founders of New and Improved. And very pleased to be here to moderate and sort of enjoy the dialogue between our two experts here. And also with me is Denise Morgan, who's a program manager at New and Improved from out of Chicago. Hey, Denise.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be your producer for today, which means I'll be launching the polls. So once our polls are finished, I will be breathing a sigh of relief and enjoying the rest of the webinar.
You'll also be sharing some of the input that folks have as they either ask questions or ask some of the comments. So periodically we'll be asking you for input. And so on your screen you'll see that there's a little screenshot of something that you should see on your screen, which is basically a question box. And so you'll see that nice highlighted area down there. It says enter a question for staff. During our webinar, if you have questions that you'd like to have answered around keys to innovation success in your organization, please ask those questions. We'll also be asking you questions periodically and just asking for some short answers, 1 or 2 or 3 words, and so we'll ask you to enter them there. So all of the dialogue will be happening through that enter a question for staff box that you can see. All listeners are muted on this call, so we will not be actually able to hear you talk. We'll be looking for your input through the question box. So with that said, let's actually put it to the test. Let's see if everybody knows where the question box is and how to get that. If you have a little plus sign next to a little blue box that says questions, you can see there's a little minus sign next to that box that the red arrow is pointed towards. Press the plus box and you should be able to see the dialogue. And so what we'd like to ask you to do now in that question box is to tell us basically where you are. So where you are in terms of innovation, where are you in your journey to creating innovation globally or at least in your organization? And what are some of your biggest innovation obstacles? So let us know what's going on for you. What are some of the big obstacles? What are some of the things that are getting in the way of innovation for you in your organization? And so we'll ask you to enter that in the question box. And Denise will share something.
It does sound like some people are hearing some echoing. It's a problem that has come and gone. This is a voice over IP kind of phone system that this company uses, so we're wondering if it'll come and go, so we'll see. If it gets a little better, gang, we apologize for that.
So again, so what are some of the biggest innovation obstacles that you face? Take a moment and jot them in the question box, and Denise will read them off as they come along. We'll give you a moment to write.
Looks like we're getting some in. Obstacles is getting the word out throughout a very large enterprise.
Denise may be working on the audio, so let's read a few of these off.
Good.
So short-term versus long-term focus is showing up as an issue in a couple of places. Money, 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 somebody was saying, not really well funded. Lack of resources, again, another not enough money. Time during the workday dedicated to innovation is very thin. We realize that we need to innovate, but we're really not quite sure what the best way to do that is. The company's still afraid to take risks. These are the kinds of things that folks are telling us. We've got folks in from all over. The lack of organizational dedication, doing it the way it's always been done, kind of mentality is what's most comfortable. These are the common things that we hear, and not uncommon at all. So good. I'd say we're getting good activity in that chat box. People have found it.
Excellent. Good news. Well, good. So, we've got some good input from the folks who are joining us, and so then the question is let's go to Bob first, I guess. So the slide title on this basically said many innovation efforts fail. And in spite of the fact that we're trying to get organization-wide innovation success and people are working hard at it, why does it fail? Why isn't this an easy thing to do? Why don't we see more really innovative organizations?
Right. If it was easy, right, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think a lot of the things that people have listed are certainly some of the things that show up. We're going to talk about a lack of an integrated approach in general. So we're going to say here, kind of our experience over the years has been that people will attempt to do a piece. You know, they'll do some aspect of what's necessary to create a culture of innovation, but they'll miss some things that'll come and you know, kind of slow them down, surprise them, undermine their own efforts. And so it seems that everybody is in agreement now that there is a way to go about doing this, but we wish it would be easier. And so we try to do kind of the minimum amount necessary to get the positive effect. And if we titrate it just even the slightest bit inaccurately, what we do is do not enough. And, you know, it's a time of cost savings. It's a time of difficulty. And it's also become a time where we have been speaking to this thing of innovation for a good while in the market. But we're starting to see some what people are calling innovation fatigue just today. Hearing from one of our folks in a company that works in the building products industry. And they've done a number of things to try to foster innovation, and they haven't worked. They haven't worked because of some of the other areas that they're not looking at are coming in, biting them in the rear, so to speak. And so we're going to have that conversation today about this integrated approach.
Great. So we're gonna hear basically some of the things that you two have been learning in your vast years working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different clients in terms of why innovation works, why innovation doesn't work. And so the sneak peek ahead is that you're going to give us 12 key areas that really help us focus on what are those things that are most important. So before we jump into that, though, let's run a poll with the group here. And so Denise is going to launch a poll in a moment that basically asks you the question that you see on the screen. So have you ever been a part of an organization that had a stated goal of developing a culture of innovation? And so you're going to see a couple of answers showing up. If you don't see it, click on the little plus sign next to polls, and you'll see that you can answer either yes or no. And we'll give you a couple of seconds to vote here. So have you ever been part of an organization with a stated goal?
Well, people can have a good view on this. We've got almost 80% of the votes in already.
Man.
So I'm going to give it a few more seconds, and I'll tell you when I close the poll.
Great, thanks.
Good.
Okay, let me give it 5 more seconds.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You tell Jonathan what's in radio.
All right,
We
it's
never have
closing.
dead air. No dead air, no dead air.
And now I will share our results.
Great. So there we go. You can see that we've got a clear, there's a clear majority. In fact, it looks like 2/3 of the folks or so have said, yes, I have been part of an organization. About 1/3 of them said no. So that's kind of interesting, which then leads to the next question. So the next poll, so we know that most folks have been a part of it, or at least a lot of them have. And so now we want to know the next question, which is, so if you have experience in an organization that was or is working on developing a culture of innovation, to what degree did it meet its goals? And so you'll see a range of options up there. And so let's understand a little bit about how that's worked out.
And we mean its goals with respect to building a culture of innovation. It might have other goals too, but it's with that in mind. So I just reread that for the first time and realized that.
For those of you that are sending me notes saying you're hearing a little feedback, we're hearing it too. On my end, I'm trying to work on solving that. So if you can just be patient with us, and we'll just try to be more conscious of letting other people speak and taking our turns. Maybe that's where that may be causing a little bit of the problems, but we're just experiencing something we haven't experienced before on the system.
Great.
All right, we got about half the votes in.
Mm-hmm. So, and let's give it another 5 seconds.
All right. All right, we're closing.
All right, sounds good.
Here are our results.
The results are here. And so what we can see here is that, boy, it's almost like a bell-shaped curve. So about 1 in 10 said not at all. 25% said a little bit. About half of the folks said somewhat. Achieve the goals, again, only 1 in 10, and exceeding expectations. Good news is there's 3% there, so hopefully we'll be able to get some perspectives from folks as we go through here in terms of what's working and not what's not working. But let's go negative for a moment. And so let's ask you to just sort of share with us your comments from the perspective of what are some of the things that caused the failures? What are some of the things that caused your organizations to not meet or to not exceed, or some of the things that got in the way? So use the question box, if you would, on your menu bar, and just give us some input on what are some of those things that caused the failures, what were some of the big obstacles, what were some of the barriers?
And I can do some read back on that while Denise is doing the working with the echo chamber here.
Yes.
So what were some? Actually, maybe I can't because it's going so fast. You guys are good. Go ahead,
that's
Denise,
right.
You can read back.
Sure, absolutely. One person found the systems weren't adequate to support the innovation. Not enough time. Existing culture is just one of those get it done. Doesn't allow much time for exploration. Too many competing priorities, lack of staff capacity to focus on the innovation goals. Resources, only a few trained innovators. I am the person in the gator pond, so it sounds like someone familiar with our gator concept. Priorities changed. I wasn't rewarded to reinforce it. Leadership's not walking the talk, not really supporting the process, and valuing the savings that innovation could provide. Lack of funding, lack of time. The bureaucracy to implement something new, that can be a challenge. Management changed, and then they didn't see the value. Too much on our plate. Silo was a big issue for someone.
Yeah, good. Good. So it sounds like there are a lot of themes here, a lot of folks saying, you know, there's some management issues, there's competing priorities, there's competing goals, there's a lot of competition, there's all the organizational structure. So Bob, Natalie, does that ring true with the organizations you've worked with?
I would say yes. I mean, all of these things, you know, typically when I'm entering into a conversation with a person, they're feeling the pain of these types of issues and trying to figure out what to do, or they've just been handed, hey, make our culture more innovative, and they have no clue as to really what that means or how to get started. So all these things, strong C-level champion, support, buy-in, looking at products versus a culture, all of these types of things come out time and time again.
Good, good. So I'm sorry, Bob, anything to add?
Well, just over the years, as we've tried to help individuals or business units or managers or even companies, they say they want to do this, and kind of what we'll get to share with you is what the keys are that, we've learned that when we do a root cause analysis of why an effort has not been successful up to now, that sometimes we've been a part of, and we start to hit some walls, we come to these keys. These are the things that we've figured out have to be dealt with in order to make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot, even though you're saying you want to do this. There's things that have to be done.
Good. So then what are the 12 keys to organization-wide innovation success?
Well, we'll look, you see them here on the screen, and Natalie and I will do a quick back and forth so that you get a sense of it. But what we're going to say is that you have to do all of these to some degree, and we'll talk a little bit about their relative weight in terms of things. But if you leave one of them unturned, if you ignore it, what will come is a surprise, and it will undermine gradually, some more rapidly than others. It will undermine your overall effort.
I love surprises. Are they good surprises?
Yep.
It's not a surprise party, is it?
Yeah, unfortunately. And the surprise comes from this dynamic where you think you should be getting it. And, like Denise was saying, somebody asked, well, we don't understand what innovation is, and somebody's tasked with it, Natalie said, and then it comes and gets you. And it's not a simple thing, unfortunately. And so here's what we think you ought to think about if you've been tasked with creating this, or you're an instigator in your company and you want to try to get the company to move in a direction that makes you more successful, avoids layoffs, and differentiates you in your niche. So let's look at the real quick.
I would add, these 12 things, Bob and I thought long and hard, dug through tons of research, went through because it's so complex and there's so many things to do, and there's just really this need to have a starting roadmap. What are the signs along the way, and knowing that each organization is slightly different. So these 12 areas. At first, we wanted to have 6, because we thought 6 sounds more manageable, but it was too simplistic. So these 12 things really took a lot of due diligence and research and on our part to kind of narrow them down as a starting point.
Right. So let's go through these 12 and just hit them at the top level, and then we can dig into some of them in a little bit more detail. So Natalie, you want to start us off by talking about skills, and then you guys can just go back and forth?
Sure. When we're talking about skills, we're really talking about training ongoing at all levels that's designed to strengthen the organization's innovation capacity. So it needs to be specifically aligned to that effort.
Nice.
Then with accountability and recognition, what we're saying is that leaders, managers, and the workforce, here we got a typo. We didn't catch it. Amazing.
No, we fixed it. We fixed it, Bob.
Okay. Well, I've got my old one I'm looking at. But the workforce are held accountable to innovation fostering behaviors. So we hold ourselves accountable to it. It's real, not some of these things we just aspire to and have no accountability.
Great. How about the measures?
Yeah, measures really, innovation, both the incremental and the breakthrough is measured and tracked. And you'll see the language start to spread through the organization as well by doing that.
Nice. Good.
And
is technology an enabler?
Say it again.
Is technology an enabler?
It can easily be. But what ends up happening is if we don't focus on building a technology that's useful and robust, it's commonly a thing where what will happen is people build technology in a way that, and I'm a little distracted, that I just minimize something, but they'll build technology in a way that it's all about capturing ideas, and it's not really about solving overall problems. And so it's an important piece that we look at a collaboration platform that all employees can access to support ideation and problem solving. Not just capturing ideas, but to collaborate more effectively in some way.
Nice, good. How about the next one?
Yeah, I mean, environment and culture, we know that those are two different things, but in this case we did put them in the same window, if you will. But what we're really talking about is purposely designed physical spaces that foster better collaboration and creativity. And by that we mean not just going for something that looks funky and cool, but really has no purpose in bringing people together.
Nice.
Let's go to the next one.
Go ahead.
So after experimentation, we've got easily accessible internal venture capital for small innovation experiments. So if I've got an idea and it's kind of not in the main work that I do, is there a way for me to get some funding to allow that to happen and for me to experiment with that?
On Focus, really a group that is responsible with active executive involvement. So again, we've learned that you need to have some executive involvement here to constantly strengthen the culture of innovation. So these are people that are called in to help facilitate really gnarly types of problems, and there needs to be a core internal. That seems to be a key to really fostering the culture.
Can't just delegate down, it has to be active. We also have to clarify goals for profit generated from current offerings, new offerings, and efficiencies in the strategy area. It's really kind of trying to find the right balance point around these things, and over time, to be able to know how it is that you're doing around these things, so you don't go just down the pathway of efficiencies, or you don't go just down the pathway of current offerings. You find the right balance for your company, your industry.
And governance. This is a tricky one. Bob and I actually had a conversation about this morning. So what we're really talking about is to have an accurate dashboard describing your products or offerings, where they are in the pipeline, and the post-introduction performance data. So something that really, at a moment in time, is verifiable by some evidence of where you're plotting it. And, that will make your projections more reliable and such.
And then the leadership actions need to demonstrate support for innovation fostering activities. Almost every other day we get an email from somebody saying we're really trying to do this well, but somewhere in our leadership hierarchy there's misbehavior or there's talk but no walk, and that's impeding us. And so this is why we said accountability, but we're saying that a senior leader or the senior-most leader or the senior-most leader in a pyramid holds all of their direct reports accountable to fostering a culture of innovation, and one of the key things is around leadership actions. We'll talk more about that one specifically.
Great.
Yeah, exploration. We found that this is important to build in some time or flexibility for employees to pursue creative ideas and that are not necessarily in their core area of responsibility. So this is where you can get some views outside the normal silos.
And the final one we have here is this internal core of facilitators to assist in problem-solving meetings. Great case evidence from places like Kraft and Johnson & Johnson that having these internal facilitators available so that if I've got a problem in my business unit that I need to be thinking about, I don't have to take my brain offline so that I run my meeting. I can get somebody else to do that and to think about the process method for the meeting, and I can use my own creative thinking to solve the problem rather than to run the meeting.
Good. So having some folks who are experts there in the process. Now, so Bob and Natalie, you've just walked us through 12 of them, and that's a lot, and all of those are really significant. Are you really expecting us to do all of these things? Are they all equal?
Well, yes, we are expecting to do all of them, but they are not all equal in terms of the effort or the impact. And so what will happen sometimes is there are a few that you really have to get started on pretty much right away. And then there are others, for instance, some of the more complex dynamics around pipeline and metrics and things like that, that as you evolve those things and strengthen those things, as long as you're doing it, you'll be well served. But there are some, boy, if you ignore them, they're going to get you real quick. Or another way to think about it is if you put energy into them, they're going to help you move forward real quick.
So tell us what the top three are from your perspective, the three pillars.
So what we see in our work around this is that a dynamic around the leadership, the stuff we talked with you around leadership, around skills development, and on really focusing intentionally on the environment culture dynamic. And so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these in turn.
Great. So let's talk about leadership first, because that's my favorite topic. Go ahead, Bob.
Looks like I've got that one. So
You do.
really interesting, over and over, oh man, and you and I both experienced this, Natalie, you've experienced it, pretty much anybody that works in this space will experience the dynamic where someone will say, this is great stuff. Maybe we're learning about how to build a more innovative culture. Or I was working last week with a group of people who consistently told us stories about some kind of misbehaving senior leader. So here's the thing that we know from the research. Between 40 and 80% of statistical variance for a climate of creativity in an organization, the researcher we like the most said 67% exactly, is accounted for by the behavior of the leader of the organization. So that means that if I'm the vice president of a particular division and the people that report up to me, or I'm the CEO of an overall company or the director of an overall company, how I behave drives a lot of that culture. The way that I choose to be as a leader. And how often do we take, as senior leaders, have we had development about how do we comport ourselves around innovation, around new thinking, around how do we evaluate the ideas of others? Not a lot in many cases. And so what ends up happening is the leadership dynamic, even though, gosh, I'm thinking of the CEO of a major Fortune 100 company that we work with, that people respect this person, likes that person a lot, and they say this person wants a strong culture of innovation, but they're not themselves driving a level of accountability down because they're inattentive to it. They've delegated it. They've delegated the responsibility and aren't following up on a regular basis. And they've delegated it to somebody who's a bit arrogant and misbehaving around innovation. So, oops, there you go. We've got a leadership dynamic, a major gap or a major blockage in developing a culture of innovation in that organization that a number of people are trying to figure out how to help with. But it's a difficult thing because of the hierarchical structure that we all have to live in.
Good. So that's the first of the pillars. So one of the ones that's really significant is leadership. So Natalie, tell us a little bit about the importance of skills.
Well, the importance of skills is really becoming more and more important all the time as our rate of change accelerates and, people have to shift their thinking more often. And, I remember when I first began in this space, it was a difficult area to convince people that there are new skills to think differently and help to innovate. Because these are smart people, they know how to think. And so it was difficult to have them understand how we're talking about thinking differently. Now I think the space has matured to the point where people understand that there are specific types of tools and techniques and mindset and skill set types of things that you can learn and use on demand to help make progress. And so it's become a really important pillar in that, if all of the stars are not aligned perfectly as you're trying to build and foster a culture of innovation, an area where you can grow capacity pretty darn quickly and start getting some evidence of results is through developing skills. And, at New and Improved, we think it's really important that you work on real stuff when you're learning the new skills, so that at the end you actually have some immediate results that help build the confidence, help create the stories of success within the organization that just kind of feeds into that engine of people wanting to use these new skills and putting pressure on leadership to actually be more innovative as well. So it's a real driver within the culture.
It's fascinating here around the skill area that if you choose to do skill development in such a way that you can demonstrate or immediately create some true return on investment, so you're training people or something to do it, and then what ends up happening is one person used the frame, it gets socialized around the corporation, but what ends up happening is people tell the story of, we just made or saved the company a bunch of money or pushed some really interesting things into our pipeline that we had never even thought of before. And that then gets folks interested and garners the executive support. But we should say this, too, is that the type of skill development that needs to happen around creativity and innovation, culture development, has to be relatively robust. There are some well-researched, well-validated methodologies around this. And then, of course, because there is so much interest in innovation, there is a lot of, we'll call it less than effective. And so one of the things that will occur is a company will choose to go down a less than effective skill development path. Just saw an email today about a company in Latin America which they did that, and then the particular skill set that people are used or learned, rather, they liked, it was fun, but they're not utilizing it. Some because of the robustness of the skill development and the skills that were taught, and some because of some other unmet 12 strategies. But so it's
well,
really
you bring up a good point, Bob. Is it's not just one workshop. There are a series of different skills that need to be developed, and depending on your role and responsibilities within the organization, there's also a level of intensity of those skills that are developed, from kind of core to advanced to leader types of skills. So it's not a one workshop answer.
No, not at all.
So it sounds like it's important to both select skills that are well proven and have a research basis behind them, rather than just some stuff that was coined by some wacky creative kook who wrote a book. So it's important to find something that's proven, and then also to be very deliberate about applying that, rather than just saying, okay, there's your training, you're done, be creative, and then hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know, Jonathan, it's driven you crazy over the last couple of years. These things that continually pop up, quoting a really poorly done piece of research and inaccurately describing brainstorming and saying brainstorming doesn't work. Well, if you don't teach it right, it doesn't work. If you don't use it right, it doesn't work. That's right. So it's just crazy. And that goes on all over the place. And here's the thing that's really fascinating about how all these 12 strategies interact with each other. So it's a bit holographic. You take one piece and you pull it out, and the whole thing starts to fall apart. So if I don't want to start there, if what I do is I create performance metrics for people, or I put in their key performance indicators, or I put on their performance appraisal as a manager, and I say to them that they have to build a culture of innovation. But I don't really quite yet know exactly how to do that. Well, they're going to scream and yell. That's great. And they're going to say, well, if you're going to hold me accountable to this, you darn well better teach me how to do it. And so if instead of pushing to people, you must go to do this, we create a pull by creating a dynamic in terms of our overall strategy where people are held accountable to building a culture of innovation, to comporting themselves and leaders in such a way that they foster the right climate for creativity in their particular part of the organization. If we put metrics in place that allow us to see how we're doing on that climate for creativity, and there are good, solid, well-researched systems to do that, the keys and the SOQ, and then there's also a bunch of bogus stuff that's coming out right now people are using as assessments of organizations that have no research validity to them. They may work, may not, but I sure would like to use something that's been demonstrated for 20 years to be effective. And so all these things tie together in a really interesting way that's just fun to play with, but also incredibly frustrating if you're just trying to go after the one, silver bullet that's going to fix it all.
Sounds like there is no one silver bullet that'll get you there.
And Bob, we had an interesting question.
Yep.
We had an interesting question come in. Someone brought up, a few companies we're all aware of, Ben & Jerry's, Southwest Airlines, Dell. I mean, these were all started by very creative individuals and who were the owners. But then when they left, it seemed like the magic left with them. So I think that speaks to what you're talking about in terms of building a sustainable culture through skills and developing that depth of leadership as opposed to just having it in one person who had the great beginning idea.
Right. We talk oftentimes about founder energy. So oftentimes companies that have a charismatic, creative, driven founder will maintain the culture of that founder for a period of time. But as the company begins to mature, they begin to try to scale out. They begin to go a little bit broader. What ends up happening is we have to rebuild a system that duplicates maybe that initial driven kind of energy. And so you'll see, for instance, if you go to the next slide, you'll see this one, is people will go after they say, well, we want to do something with our environment. So they'll take a look at, these kind of poster children of creativity and innovation in the world, the Googles and things like that, the Sam Adams, and they'll say, okay, they're great. Let's go look at what their physical plant is like. and they'll see a shift in environmental culture visuals, and so they'll try to duplicate that. Some companies will go down this one to their danger right away. So one that I was working with yesterday, this was one of their first interventions, was to create a really kind of cool space that people could go to. It had a coffee bar and little innovation rooms, and you see that slide. You can slide down. It just kind of had a fun atmosphere to it. But if you don't do the other pieces, and my manager sees me sitting in this coffee shop collaborating effectively, across the company to solve business problems, but if my manager walks by, the cues are, this is Bob sitting in a booth in a coffee shop. Well, do we really have in our mind that that's where real work gets done? It does, but that's not the kind of cultural archetype. So I get a little kind of body language from my boss that maybe I better get back to my desk, and over time we do that. So here's how we mean environment culture. So working with a company right now where it's in the nutritional product area. They develop nutritional products. And they're recently moving to a new facility. And so in this particular company, senior leader has said to all of his direct reports, darn it, each one of you, from whatever place you work in the business, you are responsible for building a culture of innovation. Well, one of his reports is a person that's responsible for physical plants. So this woman manages all the people that clean the place. She makes sure the roof doesn't leak. She makes sure people don't trip on old rugs. She makes sure that the desk chair is broken, it gets replaced, all of that kind of thing. And they're moving to a new building. And she and I were talking, and she says, I'm responsible for making this place more innovative. And so I did some, human factors analysis. And so I noticed that we've got a bunch of introverted, bioengineers. And these folks walk down the cube farm, walk down the hallways with their eyes down in their PDA or on a piece of paper, and they don't talk to each other. And I know from what we've learned from you guys that we've got to foster more collaborative interaction. She said, so wait until you see the new place, Bob. Every hallway has these arcs and curves that there is no way you can walk in that hallway with your eyes down. You have to be heads up, or you're going to trip, you're going to walk into a wall. And she says, in our initial human factors analysis is telling us that we're getting more interaction, more cross-fertilization from people that might not do that otherwise. Whoa, now see there, you're playing the game. There's somebody you can see they've been made accountable, they're thinking creatively themselves, and they're doing something from the platform that they can operate from, in her case, facilities, to foster a culture of innovation. That's not all that's being done there, but that's the sweet kind of thinking when you come at it from an integrated approach.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's great, Bob, because a lot in the chat people are talking about it's not just about a playful environment.
No.
So.
I mean, the antithesis, I'm working with a group right now in another company, big manufacturing company. I got an email 2 weeks ago from a guy. The guy, I think he's got, 25 patents currently in the market making money for the company that he's named on. Senior leader, he's got a bunch of direct reports, and he tells me, Bob, they're wanting to implement 5S+1 in my office, which is a lean technique where essentially the S stands for things like sort, sweep, shine, things like that. And it's great in manufacturing floors. It's great in your product fulfillment spaces. It's great in your R&D labs or your benches. But it's not so great to implement that in the cube farm or in the offices. And they're being told to take away all of these things that give them some kind of sense of personalization and creative kind of energy around their cubicles because it doesn't look neat and orderly. And certainly you want to treat anybody that has hoarding disorder and they're manifesting it in their office, but it's over, And I talked to the guy that's the most senior person responsible in that company for their Lean Six Sigma practices, and he just about, screamed through the phone, oh my God, and he says, I'm going to send an email broadcast-wide, system-wide right now to stop that. But what's happening is it's over-implemented in some particular area of the organization, and it's going to get them into trouble. This guy was about ready to quit on the Friday that he talked to me, and he had a lot of people that wanted to go with him. They were so frustrated with it. So now you can see people are being held accountable, but to the wrong thing. So you can start to see the relationship with some of these things across the board.
So we've talked about the 3 pillars. So we've talked about leadership, we talked about skills, we talked about environment and culture. So those are sort of the 3 that you would say really important ones of the 12. There's also some sneaky ones. So Natalie, you want to tell us a little bit about what you mean by sneaky aspects?
they're sneaky, meaning that they help to really drive success, but they don't seem like they're as important. And we found that they are really important to being drivers of the culture. And so accountability and recognition, you know, it's a kind of a big shift for people to get out of the always managing by objectives mindset and measuring those types of things, how to begin to really have some accountability and recognition around innovation efforts. And technology, you know, I think Bob's going to talk more about that as well. And he kind of alluded to it earlier, that sometimes people are looking for a magic bullet. Oh, you know, if we only had a way that people, you know, through some of this great technology we have today to be able to share their ideas. We know we have lots of ideas. They just need a technology. So it kind of becomes a little bit of a magic bullet. And after I speak now, I'm going to try to do something else to clear up any quality issues I'm having with my phone. So sorry about that. And also the group responsible for focusing on driving the innovative culture. A lot of times it gets way delegated down in the organization, and they really have no authority within the organization. So Bob, why don't we pass it to you while I try to do some troubleshooting
Try
here.
to fix that phone. Yeah, so with the focus thing, it's interesting. Over the years, we've been approached by a number of people who, they can be C-7, for instance, that you know, chief executive officer, 7 layers below, and they've been made responsible for driving innovation, and they're going to advise somebody up through the system. And they oftentimes will come to a place where they realize that they've got to get some executive support, but the layers of protectiveness in any bureaucracy are such that, you know, I don't want you talking to my boss unless you go through me, you know, and if there's any glitch anywhere in that system and you don't get access to the people that need to pull the right strings, then you're in trouble. So there's got to be, at that senior level, this driver on focus instead of just delegating it down. That's the one that right now in my practice I'm seeing more conversation around where people are getting into trouble there. A senior leader will know that he or she has got to drive a culture of innovation. They delegate it down, and then there's a layer between he or she and the people that are actually, you know, kind of doing the hard thinking around this for the company, and they're not paying attention to getting access. Same dynamic with technology. Right now, there are probably, you know, magnitude of order, there are hundreds of software vendors that make the promise that if you put this software in, it'll help your company to be more innovative. They're, you know,
magic bullet.
Magic bullet, sure. And we agree that you need to put these things in place. But the sneaky part of this is that, and I've been kind of yelling at that industry for a while, the big players in that industry have all heard me say that you guys have got to stop talking about your product as an idea management software system. First ones entering talked about that first way. The first product in that they did an IPO on out of Imaginatic, they call their thing Idea Central, their product. And what I've been telling them is your job is to create a creative collaboration platform. And then I see at PolyOne, they've taken one and they've, you know, made it PolyOne specific. They bought it from a vendor. And what they're doing a great job at, this is a polymer manufacturing company in Cleveland, Ohio. They don't go after ideas so much as they gather the problems or the issues that are going on in their business, and then they run a campaign. And they'll run that campaign to get the best thinking and ideation from the people inside of their business. Some companies also go externally to their collaborators, their customers, their suppliers even, to get ideas about how they might solve a particular problem. I'm seeing much better benefit from that technological approach than from one that kind of gets itself branded, and that will influence how people see it as an idea management software platform. So fortunately, a lot of that industry is starting to make some shifts in that direction, and they're thinking about campaigns, and they're looking for problems as much as they might be looking for ideas. Pfizer, for instance, is using, they've got one of these ideation platforms as an internal ideation platform, so they'll get, you know, ideas to solve problems, and they'll find problems inside the business, and they're using another separate one external to the business to sense and find opportunities for themselves as well. It's a kind of neat way to go about doing it.
And I'm going to say something to test my audio. Is this better?
That's okay.
A little bit. Good. So let's talk about this. So there's 12 different areas. There's a lot of things that you could do. It sounds like there are some things that you can overplay. You gave the example of technology. If we just do this, then that's what we got to do. So let's give 98% of our attention to that, and let's just do a little bit around the other ones. But it sounds like there's a continuum. So if one end is, hey, you know what, we ignored it, we're not doing anything about it. The other side of that is sort of the dangerous obsessions. It sounds like there's an optimal range in there as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what happens if we don't hit that sweet spot? Bob, you want to go first?
Yes, if you ignore it, you're going to get into trouble. We're just seeing that. You can do a lot of the other things well, but if you don't attend to one of those areas, it's gradually going to come and get you. You can see this in both scenarios that you run yourself. Just try it. Build 11 of them and ignore that one, and then imagine a future where you've ignored that. What's going to happen? You'll see it. And then the other is...
Can you give us a quick example of that?
So let's pick one. Throw one at me. So let's imagine that you've ignored measurement. So what's ended up happening is you don't have any sense of the pipeline. You don't have any sense of where your organization is with respect to the number of products that you're getting value from that are innovative, the number of products that you're getting value from that are incremental, and you haven't spent time figuring out what that sweet spot is for you. Over time, what will happen is the short-term wins that you can get from incremental change will get the funding needed when the long-term pipeline products will lose the funding. Because we'll go Q on Q, we'll get quarter-on-quarter return needs, and we're not holding ourselves accountable because we don't have the good measurements. So we've got to have that in there so that we understand what's going on in the overall organization.
Yeah, one of the things, too, that happens is people start to think that it's only about products. So if you ignore areas for the organization, then people start to see that it's not for them. When the organization is speaking about innovation, they're not talking about me. And largely that can come into under the accountabilities for everybody in the organization.
And there, the dangerous obsession side of it is that when we go down the magic bullet path. So we're going to make the nice innovation space. We're just going to do training. Southwest Airlines, one of the leading executives there, she said that she thought sometimes that training was a dangerous obsession for them. She said the reason for that wasn't that she thought they were training too much, but that they would get, because they train all of their people to be individually accountable to make the company great, they get a dynamic where people come up with great ideas to move things forward and they actually implement them. They're able to do that. So a flight attendant comes up with a great idea, but they don't have a great way yet, she said, of disseminating that new great thinking across the organization such that others could pick up on the same thing. So, so she saw a hole in the area of technology probably for them.
Good.
Bob, you touched on skills, and a really good question came in. Earlier you said you have to really focus on the skills that have been proven. Can you maybe touch on a couple of skills that have been proven that people should be thinking about?
Oh, good. Well, we actually have a white paper specific to this that you can get that Jonathan and I and a few of our colleagues wrote looking at these things. But some of the key skills, we see that pretty much all of the creative processes, if you understand creative problem solving, that particular methodology, whether you learn Synectics or Kepner-Trago or TRIZ or Six Thinking Hats or whatever, if you've got that, design thinking, you've got that overall skill set that understands the flow, the ebb and flow, the diverge-converge dance of creative problem solving, you're going to be good there. We believe that everybody needs to learn to separate divergent thinking from convergent thinking. That's really a useful skill to have. And we also believe that there's this kind of emotional intelligence skill set around humility, curiosity, courage, tenacity, lining with your passion and then holding yourself in integrity with that. There's just skill sets around that are really worthwhile examining, and you can do some things to help that. So, for instance, the person who is emotionally unintelligent in the form of arrogance, well, they're not going to be curious, and it's going to be very difficult for them to be creative and collaborative with other people. So those are some of the things. They go beyond the scope of what we can talk about here. We've got some nice things written about that in the website, and so you can see a lot of those articles on, that are available for that.
Yeah, good. And one of the things that we want folks to do, we'll put up the contact information at the end of this, and if you have some specific questions or want some direct links to that, just drop us an email, and we can send that information out to you. So at this point, I want to check in with the group, so our inquisitive guests, and basically ask you to go back to the question box and tell us which of the 12 areas, and I'll put those 12 key areas up in a moment, which of those 12 key areas do you think that your organization is most ignoring and really ignoring at their peril, right? So thinking about driving more innovation, which of those 12 keys is your organization ignoring? So if you take a look at the question box and type those in, here are the 12 key areas again. And so we'd like to hear from you. What's your organization ignoring? And this is all anonymous. We're not going to share names or organizations, but we're just curious what's not being done. What are we not paying attention to?
And Denise, you'll do a read back on that one for us?
Absolutely, yes. And I know that at least one person said they lost audio.
Yeah.
This person can't hear me, of course. Overall, I just want everyone to know we'll be sending out a recording. So if you're running into any technical issues, you feel like you've missed something, you're going to get a recording in a couple of days. Okay, coming in. So I'm going to give it a second or two just to get a bit of a trend going.
Mm-hmm.
The things that are top of the list: leadership and experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Accountability and leadership seems to be a big theme in there.
Skills is coming up.
And what I see oftentimes is the skills at the leadership level, which is interesting. You know, they don't have time. They're so darn busy. It's hard for them to get that. You know, Newell is doing a good amount of executive coaching with some of our senior leaders to help them develop those skill sets in a one-on-one setting. But it's a hard one for them to find the time to do. Totally understand how difficult that is.
Yeah, seen a lot of explorations, a lot of accountability, a lot of leadership. I mean, all of them are showing up in here, which I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but it seems like we're getting them from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is true of what we see in our conversations with clients. It really depends on your organization on what things are being ignored. I mean, that's where when we were really narrowing down these 12 things where we started to see how important they all are, but different organizations are doing different things.
Yep.
Good. So let's ask another question. And so the question I want to ask now, again, using the question box in your menu bars, which of the 12 areas might be a dangerous obsession for your organization? Which are the things that folks are so focused on that they're ignoring some of those other things and thinking that that one thing will fix the organization? So again, I'll put up the 12 areas. But what are the dangerous obsessions? What are the things that folks are doing too much of or you're seeing too much of in your organization?
See what kind of trending we get here. We have our opinions about what the trend is. There's certain areas that we hear more about, but it'll be interesting with this group.
Right now I'm seeing governance coming up frequently.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is interesting.
I think back as that's happening to the time everybody was putting all of their energy into developing a stage gate pipeline system, and they thought that would be the Deus ex machina for innovation. I mean, it helps. You want to have that, but if you put all your energy there and tracking all that, so what else, Denise, are you seeing?
I'm seeing measuring coming up quite a bit.
In technology is a thread too.
Yeah, it's interesting in some conversations around measurement. How it becomes a dangerous obsession that I've heard is that they get so obsessed with measuring and paralyzed by what to measure that they just do nothing, and then it slows them down from making progress in any of the other areas.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we're not seeing skills. We're not seeing technology, so that correlates with what we asked in the last question.
Good.
Yeah, good. So big themes seem to be government, seems to be government, also governance, technology, and measurement as well. Yeah.
That's right. Lack of curiosity, lack of humility. Boy, there's those issues in government, at least in our country. Good.
So we need to. So let's wrap it up. There may be some last-minute questions to pick up along the way. So we're talking about dangerous obsessions, and it sounds like all we need to do is just one simple thing, but maybe it's a little bit more complex than that. So let me ask the bottom line question, and Bob will ask you this question. So how do you get started? How do you kick it all off with one of those 12?
Well, with the folks on the call today, so you'd look at, your own particular area of touch. So, where can you start to make that particular difference? Now, we have some case evidence and some experience of companies gradually making a change here. So I'm thinking, and I never like to out any particular companies when we're in process with them around this, and everybody likes to tell the case studies of others, so I'm being careful here. But I've got one company we're working with where it's like 1,000 kayakers pushing the super tanker on one side, trying to change it. And then there is a tugboat pushing against us, and that tugboat has a name and wears a suit. And so we're working there, but we're gradually getting more kayakers, and so they'll switch metaphors. I'll mix some metaphors there. I think at the inflection point where people with the torches and pitchforks are going to end up making the statement to leadership that needs to be made. And so you get started where you are. You find out what your circle of influence is, and you start playing down that circle of influence. And if you could go to the most senior leadership in the organization, you do that. I was working with a person I've been working with now for 7 years yesterday. We had dinner last night. She specifically is working within her circle of influence, and as her career advances in the organization she's working in, she's having a broader impact. And so that's the game, and it's a longer-term thing. What's really cool about it is that it can make a pretty big difference for a lot of people in their lives, not just at work. So you make your company more innovative, and you choose to do that, but it also helps you. So, I look at the list. Figure out where you can start playing. And at a minimum, get yourself trained in this. So, we're here with this hour-long webinar, get yourself a little more, understanding of this than we can cover off in this short period of time.
So the webinar is not a magic bullet? Darn. Well, so then the other big question that comes up a lot is, hey, you know what? I really do want to get started on this stuff, but I don't have anyone else, looking out for me. I don't have folks on my side. So, Natalie, let me ask you this question: how do I get support for moving it forward?
Well, I think Bob really answered that with his, how do you get started? You really have to take action, take responsibility for what you can do, where you are, and your level of influence. And that simple handout that we made available to everybody on the session today to really scan your environment, see what you might be ignoring or not doing enough of, what you might be your dangerous obsessions, and where you think you need to put effort. That's a great way to have a conversation to gather support, because you can start to talk about some gaps, and likely if you're feeling the pain points, then other people are feeling the pain points as well. And I have to say to everybody, I really apologize for the audio issue. We were on a half hour before and tested our audio, and interestingly enough, Bob was the only one that had an issue, and now his sounds great, and the rest of us are having some audio issues. So we did try to troubleshoot that, so our apologies.
Good.
Well, I think we have, someone sent in I was just going to say, someone sent in a very nice quote that is so fitting for what we all are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
The secret, it's from Mark Twain, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks and starting on the first one.
Great.
Nice. Good. So we need to wrap up because we are out of time. So want to give you the opportunity to, if you have further questions or comments or really want to explore what do we do next, how do I get support in my organization, you'll see Natalie's contact information up there. She would love to chat with you about this. So feel free to drop a line. I'm going to put that back up in a second, but right now, as we wrap up, I want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing us to engage in this conversation with you. Thank you for feeding our brains. Thank you for letting us feed your innovative brains. And again, remember, this was a no-calorie webinar, but hopefully you got a lot of richness in spite of that. So thanks, folks, for participating in the webinar. We hope you got a lot of good stuff out of it. There is a survey coming out that will ask you some quick questions. And again, further questions, please drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.